Oxford from the inside. The good, the bad, but always the truth.
Hello and welcome to Oxford from the Inside. The good, the bad, but always the truth. Today we're doing a Quickfire Questions episode and I'm joined by David. Please introduce
Hi,
yourself for us.
I'm David. I'm a fourth year biochemistry student at Trinity College.
Lovely, lovely. So the question that I want to ask you is, what is a day in the life like for you? What do you get up to? What's a standard day?
So the fourth year in the undergraduate master's course is, the majority of it is a lab project where you'll be working on your project and in the end you write your dissertation on it. So what I do most days is I wake up, have breakfast, go to my lab, do my experiments, and because it's COVID, after that I have to leave right away and do all my writing at home. I don't go in all days because the lab's running at reduced capacity. So some days I stay home and I do data processing, or I plan the next experiment and just generally communicate with the lab group about the way to move forward, really.
Yeah, sounds good. So do you get to choose your own lab project?
So the way it works is that you apply to several labs in the end of your third year. So there's obviously a huge variety. It's not all within the biochemistry department. So for example, I'm in a structural biology lab, which, while that's essentially biochemistry, it doesn't fall within the department. Some people are in medicine department, pharmacology. I'm pretty sure you can go into like biophysics, so maybe go in the physics department. Obviously, some labs, many people apply for, not everyone gets it, which was the case for me. So I essentially went into a second round of choosing labs and essentially chose from the leftover labs, which sounds quite sad, but I ended up in a lab I really enjoy. So wasn't all that sad in the end.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I guess so. Do you find it really interesting, or do you think it feels more like, does it feel like a full-time job, or do you still kind of feel like a student while you're doing it?
Oh, I definitely feel like a student just because you're working with very capable researchers and there's no other, master students around. And many of the techniques you might have learned about in theory, but using them in practice is very different, and it's a big learning experience for sure. I think only after this will I feel like a real scientist. I'm still becoming one, but it's a really welcome sort of contrast to the rest of the degree where you're learning a lot. You're working really hard, writing lots of essays and stuff, and gaining appreciation for like the theory of biochem. But once you go into a lab, it's very different, and really getting very involved in the field and staying up to date and essentially becoming an expert in the little thing you're doing is rewarding in like a very different sense, and it's good fun.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, can you kind of explain the difference between the first 3 years of a biochemistry degree and then the kind of fourth year, the like master's course?
So the first year is very much foundations, stuff that you maybe not need to, but it's stuff that's very helpful to know. And if you want to become a biochemist who is aware of how the techniques work, is aware of the chemistry behind the underlying processes, and can analyze data sets in terms of like being good enough at maths and being good enough at stats to do it. Then the second and third year, which is referred to as part one of the course, is essentially just learning about the basic principles of biochemistry, and the way we're assessed is an essay form. So it's very much how much you understand the processes and can apply the things you've learned to certain essay questions. So that's that's a format that you spend 2 years doing. You're writing loads of essays, learning a lot through that. I think the essay format is a really, really good way to learn biochemistry, because I think simple, short questions wouldn't really cut it in terms of understanding the processes. But then, yeah, your fourth year, you're in a lab, and while you do some teaching labs throughout your first 3 years, you follow a strict protocol. You don't always necessarily know what's going on. It's always timed because you want to get your results by the time the labs are over. And the write-ups are very much like, what bit did this show? And there's little text blocks to fill out. It's not a proper lab write-up. And you go into the lab, and you essentially are facing a problem. Like, I want to find this out, or this interests me, or this is of interest to the field. And then you have to think about which techniques are the best to apply. You have to start understanding processes that people don't understand yet. So you take that way of thinking you've acquired through this sort of essay writing about processes that we already understand, and you take the knowledge you learned about how techniques work and what their strengths and weaknesses are, and you apply those methods to the problems you're facing in the lab, and then hopefully find answers.
Wonderful. That sounds great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And to everyone who's listening, thank you for listening. Good luck with the rest of term, and make sure to check us out on social media at Oxford from the Inside. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellis.